Hello, all of you beautifuls. It's been a very long time, but now I get to come back and read chapters 5 through 10. Hopefully, you enjoy. Let's get right into the reading. Adults are always trying to figure out what makes kids tick. They send professors in middle schools to do research and run tests. They publish 1,000-page studies. Know what? They don't have a clue. If you want to understand middle school students, there are only one way to do it. Follow the widgies. Widgie givers, and widgie receivers take it from someone who's been down that road before. Sad to say, I'm one of those receivers. Zach Powers, Lenny Young, and their crowd ride roughshod over a lot of people. But if statistics were taken, I'd be victim number one. Until Capricorn Anderson showed up, even I could pick on a guy like that. Not that I'd ever do such a thing. I never lower myself to the level of those nitwits. But what a kid. He wasn't nerdy in a typical way. He was a computer geek or captain of the class of the chess club. That was me. He couldn't speak Klingon. In fact, he'd never even heard of Star Trek. But just one peek at the sky, and you know that dweeb-wise, there was a new sheriff in town. A look at eyes were on him as he sat down in the cafeteria. God, it felt to have them staring at someone else for a change. I walked over to him. A guy like this was going to need a lot of friends he could get. One. Capricorn, right? I set my tray down across from him. I'm Hugh, from Social Studies. I stuck my hand out, and he just stared at it. It wasn't a snub. Believe me, I could teach a college course on snubs. This was cluelessness. He honestly didn't know what to do. I remember you, he said finally. There are so many people here. It's hard to keep track. I can help you with that, I pointed to the table where Zach and Lena were holding court. That crowd thinks they own the place. They think that because they do. Stay away from them. They'll chop you up and press you into salami. Now anyone you see hanging around their crew falls into one of those two subgroups, the jocks and the wannabes. Stay away from both, and you definitely don't want anything to do with the goths, burnouts, skateboarders, hip-hop kids, environmentalists, or anybody who has a baseball cap on backward. I took one note of the blank expression on his face. You know, standard survival skills. I'm sure it was I'm sure it was similar at your old school. I was homeschooled before this. No kidding. I heard of that, but I never met anybody who did, Knit. What's it like? Wonderfully, said Wanley. I'll bet. My enthusiasm was genuine. It must be nice to wake up in the morning and not have to worry about walking into a hostile environment with your next widgie and matter of not it but when. What's a widgie? Wow, homeschooling must be heaven. I didn't answer the question. He'd find out soon enough. My eyes fell on Cap's lunch, which consisted of salad, carrot sticks, and 2 slices of whole wheat bread. He must have noticed because he was looking curiously at my hamburger. What part of the animals does the meat come from? I don't know, I chewed thoughtfully. The lips probably. Want a bite? I'm a vegetarian. At the moment I heard an all too familiar thump coming from behind us. Maybe one kid in 1,000 would have recognized the sound. But I'm that kid. I was an incoming spitball. I tensed, waiting for impact. But it wasn't aimed at me. Instead, I watched the tiny projectile land and lodge itself amid Cap's Cap's cascading piles of long hair. He didn't even feel it. Her mitts could hold up and all that hair, and no two would ever meet. At Zach's table, a celebration was going on, with lots of back slapping and high fives. Darley Penningfield, Zach's football buddy and co-ninja, was horsing around. Deadeye I called him, but never to his face. When he was faced too close, mine was usually being stuffed into a locker. Then I caught sight of a straw in Nami Engler's hand. I guess Cap's mop was an irresistible target for amateur spitballers, not just the professionals. The PA system came to life with the voice of Mr. Kasagi. Just a reminder, the election for 8th grade president will be held on Tuesday, September 26. The position is open for all 8th graders. So far, only one name has been placed in nomination: Capricorn Anderson. Thank you. I was blown away. You're running for president in your first week here? Cap scanned the ceiling. Who is that? If he wants to talk to us, why doesn't he just come into the room? But why is he talking about you? I persisted. Are you running for president? Of course not. I don't believe in government. I come from the Autonomous Collective. But Mr. Kasagi said, and suddenly, I just knew. The triumphant grins on the smug faces of Zach and company told the whole story. Cap hadn't placed his name in nomination. Zach had done it for him. I'd hear something about this last year. The 8th graders had picked this computer genius, Luke Simard, and got him elected president just so they could make fun of him. By the end of the year, the poor kid was so crazy that he skipped graduation and applied to an alternative high school so he wouldn't have to face the more years with the people who'd made his life so miserable. Now, we were the 8th graders, and it was our turn to do the same thing. Only instead of picking the smartest guy in school, Zach and Zarad, and on somebody who didn't even seem to know what a PA system was. I opened my mouth to issue the warning. The words were forming on my tongue. Cap, get over to the office this minute and take yourself out of nomination. Do it now before it's too... And then it hit me. If Cap Anderson had never been born, the name announced to the whole school would have been mine. My strange and hairy new friend was the only thing preventing me from being the next Luke Simard. Jeez. I shut my mouth and kept it shut, trying to keep my eyes off of the spitball still lodged just above Cap's left ear. I felt bad about it, but I felt something else too. Better him than me. Nami, name, Chapter 6. Name, Naim Erlanger. This time was coming. I could almost smell it. One day Zach Powers was going to be my boyfriend. Sure, he was sniffing around Lena. Everybody knew that. But sooner or later he'd see that she lacked the depth of sincerity of yours truly, and that besides should had the hots for Darley. Or maybe Grant Tubman. If only he'd get rid of that ridiculous tongue stud that looked like a pimple. Enough said, especially about Lena, who was my best friend. It was tough to compete with Lena, who was naturally pretty and had a very strong personality. To be honest, she was kind of a bulldozer when it came to getting what she wanted, but I don't say it in a mean way. People did what she told them to do because they liked it. They liked her. Not just because she made their lives miserable if they didn't. And since I was more than Lena and not quite so willing to squeeze into size 0 jeans and apply makeup with a snow blower, I had to try a little harder to get Zach's attention. Who would have thought that the Equalizer would turn out to be the biggest dweeb in school? No, not Hugh Winkleman, Capricorn Anderson. The minute I shot this spitball into the cafeteria, I could feel Zach noticing me. He said, "Nice trajectory," and he asked if he could finish my tater tots. I knew it was the turning point in our relationship. The road to Zach went straight enough, new hippie kid. Example: Zach wanted to make Cap 8th grade president. Sure, the rest of us had our hearts set on Winkleman, but I quickly volunteered to work on Cap's election campaign. Not that anybody was running against him, but we still had to make it look real so Mr. Kasagi wouldn't get suspicious. We made posters. My favorite was Capricorn Anderson, the people's choice. Because while I was painting, Zach said, "It doesn't have to be perfect, Naomi. It's not like anybody's going to have to vote for him." And while he was talking, his hand brushed my hand. Lena was a little suspicious when I told her we didn't need any help with the election. You definitely didn't want to get on her bad side. But the time Zach and I started going out, she'd probably be hot and heavy with Darley. Or Grant Tubman, minus the tongue stud. So I was safe. Zach was so cool. It was almost like watching the plan beam straight from the brain onto the screen of a blockbuster movie. We put up the posters, scared off 2 dummies who wanted to run for the job. And presto, Capricorn Anderson was elected 8th grade president, unopposed. The best part is, Doofus had no idea what just happened to him, Zach choltered. "Who knows what's going on under that hair?" snorted Lena. I personally got the impression that Cap thought all the new students had to go through this, like being president was a part of registering for choosing electives. But I kept my mouth shut and laughed along with the others. Zach had a great smile. When they made the announcement at the old school assembly, Zach and Darley hoisted the new president up on their shoulders and marched onto the stage. He'd been around seat average for a couple of weeks, and then people knew his name from our posters had him seen in the halls. But this was the first time the entire student body made the connection. 1,100 kids took in the sight of a Janine middle school hippie. This tall, skinny, long-haired boy in tie-dye shoes poking out of those homemade sandals. He looked so silly, so goofy, so weird that he almost was cute. Not attractive, but adorable in the sense that you couldn't help pitying him, like a wet puppy rolled in sand. Zach started shouting, "Speech! Speech! Speech, please!" And some other people took up the cry. Mr. Kagasagi handed over the microphone and we all quieted down to listen to what Cap had to say. He stared at us for a long time, until I was noticed, wondering if Zach had chosen someone who was so nerdy to be so perfect for the job. Then he announced, "I shouldn't be president." "Why not?" Darla heckled. Cap shrugged with that one. But when he finally spoke, his answer was as bizarre as the appearance. I don't know anybody's name." Like the president had to be able to rattle off the names of all 1,100 of this constitutions, or else he wasn't qualified. Peals of laughter rolled through the gym. Even the sixth graders could see how dopey that was. I felt proud and exhilarated. I felt the woman that's behind every great man. The one behind Zach, I mean. That was fantastic. I congratulated him when this assembly was over. He grabbed me by the arm and began towing me to the front. "We're not done yet." His oh-so-blue eyes gleamed. "If the hairball thinks that his duty is to learn 1,100 names, who are we to burst his bubble by telling me he doesn't have to?" "You mean—" I didn't get a chance to finish the thought because he was already flagging down a very dazed 8th grade president. Poor Cap. I honestly felt sorry for him. Freshly to a new office he never ran for. Well, what were you thinking? He just wanted to get out of there and be left alone. "Remember me, Cap? I'm Zach, and this is Naomi." Zach greeted him. "Now you know us. It's only a matter of time before you get the chance to meet everyone at the school." Cap's haunted eyes took in the sight of the entire student body, maybe then 1,000 strong, streaming through the gym exists. If it hadn't been so funny, if Zach's eyes didn't have almost turquoise, I would have confessed that the whole thing was a gag. "I'm not good at remembering names," he told us. "I don't know a whole lot of people." "We're sure you can do it," I assured him. "One," he presented. "One what?" "One person. I see other people when we're in town for supplies, but Rain does all the talking." "Rain?" I queried. "My grandmother. She's the person I know." That was the thing about Cap that I would never dare to say to Zach. I could never escape the suspicion that he was putting us on even more than we were putting him on. But if that was the case, he had been to the greatest actor on the face of the earth, because he didn't crack a smile, not for a millisecond. Zach pressed on with his plan, and I pressured on with mine. We put a suggestion box in the guidance office for students to bring their concerns to the president's attention. Cap never suspected that the entries were all fake. The entries were all fake, and that were writing them in the equipment room after Zach was done football practice. We spent too much time laughing for any serious romance to develop, but it was fun. We were with hysterics at the thought of our hippie asking Mr. Kasagi to convert the water fountains to Gatorade and to erect a bullfighting stadium in the parking lot. Surprisingly, Mr. Kasagi seemed to be kind of going along with the gag. It was one thing for him to keep out of the students' matters, like he did last year with that Simard kid. But when someone asks you for a bullfighting ring in an American public school, you have to know you're being pranked. It's a prank, bro. The camera's right there. Mind you, when you just heard the same kid express the belief that was a president has known every student's name. You can never be 100% sure. Whatever the reason, our assistant principal never took Cap aside and explained to him that someone was yanking his chain. And we really yanked. Zach told him that he had to hold weekly press briefings for reporters from the school newspaper. The reporters? Us? We didn't work for the paper. But how was Cap going to know that? What about the real newspaper staff? I asked unentertainingly. They're not invited, Zach said decisively. Those dweebs be happy they didn't make any of themselves presidents. The first of these conferences was held in a room that didn't exist. Cap wandered the halls like a lost soul in search of a fictional geography lab. Zach planted students out there to give them bogus directions. Make a left at the music room, down the stairs, through the double doors, and 2 rights and a hard left at the furnace. We rescheduled for Friday. After telling him how disappointed we were that he stood up to us, he apologized and promised to do better. The briefing was held in room 226, which did exist but was locked. While he wrestled with the doorknob, Zach sent the football cheerleaders to form their human pyramid right beside him. They chanted, "Cap, Cap, he's our man. If he can't open it, nobody can." To tell the truth, I wasn't super high on this idea since Lena was not only a cheerleader, but also the apex of the pyramid. It was impossible to compete with anyone in cheerleading outfit, especially at her school. Over the summer, the basement got flooded and the uniforms all shrank. I felt better when the real press briefing began. Lena traded her pom-poms for a reporter's notebook, and we all spoke up for the people's right to know. "Cap, what are you going to do about the terrible state of cafeteria food?" "Cap, the boys' locker room is a cesspool. What are your plans to improve it?" "Cap, have you thought of air conditioning the school buses in light of global warming?" I don't have the answers to any of these things, but, was his grave reply, "Maybe you picked the wrong person to be president," which only proved that he picked exactly the right person to be president. Now that Lena was back in the plan, I had to come up with something good. In order to stand out in Zach's eyes, I invented a secret admirer for Cap named Laura Leah Lumley, 7th grade student government groupie who slid perfume love notes through the vents of his locker. "These are perfect," Zach enthused. I could tell that he hadn't overlooked the bright red lip print that I had kissed onto every piece of stationery. Zach had Cap's combination, so we made it our mission to see that he never opened the door without finding something bizarre and or gross. It became my favorite part of every day, pressed against Zach in the drinking fountain alcove, waiting to see what Cap would pull out there next: a rotten banana with a creasy black peel, a goat's brain from the science lab, a Ziploc baggie of Pepto-Bismol, a dead bird. Cap didn't react very much to any of these things except the bird. We watched the maze as he wrapped the small body into a paper towel and marched it straight out the door. He got as far as the flower bed. Then he began scrambling with one hand into the soft dirt. Zach peered through the floor to the ceiling window. "What is he doing? Digging worms?" "That's not it," I said in a tremulous voice. "He's burying the bird." Zach was mystified. "Why?" "Well," Cap placed the shrill little corpse in the hole and covered it trimly with earth. Then he plucked a couple of daisies and placed them across the tiny grave. He stood up, removed his psychedelic headband from the haystack of hair, and bowed solemnly. The smart move definitely would have been to hang back with Zach and make fun of the performance, but something else came over me. I still can't explain it. I walked outside and besides Cap. I wasn't a bird lover. I didn't know a canary from a condor. But the look of sympathy on hippies' faces was so honest, so pure, that it planted the emotions inside my heart. Suddenly I had to pay my own respects to the innocent creature, cut down in the prime of life. It wasn't much of a funeral. We stood there like junior undertakers, while the wind turned Cap's unbound hair into a reasonable big hair forest. "Death is a part of life," he said simply. "This is just another part of your journey. Fly well." I noticed that quite a few kids were looking on, trying to figure out if we'd gone crazy. Probably. One 7th grader took off his baseball hat in reverence. I caught a disapproving look from Zach on the other side of the window, and silently cursed myself for making a mistake Lena never would have made. Yet it seemed so right. I couldn't have been sorry for that. When Zach became my boyfriend, I hoped I could make him a sensitive Capricorn Anderson. Afterward, some of the spectators went up to Cap to say a few quiet words. He asked all of them their names. So it looks like Cap is finding out to be a good, government kind of guy. He's trying to get along with the people, trying to learn their names. It seems like they're trying to get him in trouble, but yet he's just doing his own thing. Honestly, he's just trying to help people out. Instead of them hurting him, he's growing better as a student body. Or as a student. And he's learning how to be more of a governmental type of person. Name: Miss Donnelly. As Cap's caseworker, part of my job was to check in with the school from time to time to make sure he was doing well. That's how I wound up having lunch with Frank Kasagi, assistant principal at Clifford Middle School. "Oh, don't worry about Cap from an audience standpoint," he assured me. "He's right up there with our brightest and best. Commune or no, he's been very well educated by someone." I thought her brain and shuddered. Even after all these years, she had always been the teacher of Garland. For someone who rejected all forms of authority, she was a major tyrant in the classroom. If she hadn't adopted the hippie lifestyle, she would have made a terrific Marine drill sergeant. Then Mr. Kasagi let the other shoe drop. Yet, socially, in an entire teaching career, I've never met a student who knows so little about the ordinary everyday living. "Have you worked with any other students from this Garland farm?" "Only one," I replied faintly. "She had a very difficult adjustment. I didn't bother to mention that she was me." Adjustment is one thing, but Cap is like a space traveler who just landed on Earth, left his guidebook on home world. It is possible that he honestly believes bullfighting is a sport we play in the middle of school. Bullfighting, I repeated. How did this subject come up? His reply posed far questions than it answered. Apparently Cap had been asked about it as part of the duties as an 8th grader president. 8th grade president? How come a brand new student who didn't know the soul in this place get himself elected president? It made no sense to me, but later on 16-year-old daughter acted like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Duh, 8th grader president is an honor, mother. It's like being elected village idiot. Every year they pick the biggest wingnut in the building. It must have seemed like the freakazoid dropped straight from heaven to fill the post. I was horrified. Sophie, that's awful. She shrugged. What's really awful is that you're a social worker with power over kids' lives, and you have no clue about common knowledge at school. Did this happen to you while you're in 8th grade? Remember Caitlin Tortolo? She didn't really win a semester in Europe. She left the school early to have a nervous breakdown. And I cannot say a word today. Participated in it? Everybody did, she reported. At least we did nothing to stop it. If you don't go along with the gag, you're next. I must have looked disapproving, because she added, Grow up, mother. This world's a big, tough, scary place. Like you don't know that. Actually, I did know that. I didn't realize she knew it. I felt terrible for poor Cap. It was hard enough for him to come out of total isolation of Garland without having to be dropped with a snake pit that was in the middle of school. Worse, I could have never warned him about not without poisoning his one and only experience of the real world. My sole consolation lay in fact that he would have to suffer the abuse only for a few weeks more. The grandmother was recovering well. I'm sure he would have liked to visit her more often, but the facility was an hour away, more with traffic, and there just wasn't enough time to take him during the week. Anyway, and deep in my heart, I believed a genuine school, nasty and merciless as it could be, was still better than Garland Farm. Besides, nastiness was relative. After school, Cap had to come home to my house, where Sophie was there to demonstrate the true meaning of nasty. She hated Cap Anderson with a passion that I wouldn't have believed her capable of, and I was her mother. Even when he did things that had nothing to do with Sophie, she took them personally. His healthy vegetarian diet, she considered a slap in the face to her own eating habits. His neatness was a deliberate ploy to make her appear messy. She couldn't bear Cap woke up early to practice touch on her front lawn. But Sophie, I tried to reason. Why would it matter to you? You're barely awake at an hour. It's humiliating, she raged. We might as well put on a sign at roof that says, Warning, Mutant on Premise. That next morning, when Cap was performing the dance-like martial arts moves by the dogwood bushes, my darling daughter emptied an entire wastebasket full of water down on his head. This she followed with a string of language that would have set fire to the sidewalk. All from the girl who was so concerned about what the ninth boars might think. He looked up at her, smiling instead of heaving a rock through her window, which is what I would have done. Oh, what a sight he was! With all the hair hanging limply around his shoulders, he looked like weeping willow soggy sandals. According to Sophie, the entire incident was my fault. By bringing Cap into our home, I have left her with no choice to put matters into her own hands. Since Sophie was never going to apologize to Cap, I did it myself. "I'm so sorry, dear," I said, handling him with a towel that would have dried 1/10 of his abundant hair. "You have to forgive Sophie, although I can't think of a reason why." He looked sad. "She doesn't like me." I smiled. 16-year-old girls don't like anybody. His answer brought me straight back to Garland days. When you're unkind to others, it's usually because you don't believe that you yourself deserve kindness. "Don't be so nice," I said. "She can be pretty mean." In her defense, she's been going through a lot these last couple of weeks. Her father, my ex-husband, his heart's in the right place, but he makes a lot of promises that he can't keep. And Sophie ends up caught in the middle. Just yesterday, she was waiting for him to pick her up for the driving lesson. He never showed up. That's him. Doesn't come, doesn't call, dead air. She won't admit it, but she's devastated. He looked thoughtful. "I guess when you have a lot of people in your life, there's more of a chance that someone will let you down." I laughed. "You're right, but it's a risk most of us aren't prepared to take." Cap looked dubious. He had grown up with exactly one person in his whole life, Rain. And regardless of what I thought of her, to him she had been as constant as rising sun. How terrifying must it have been to lose that. Chapter 8, name Capricorn Anderson. I really miss Rain. My whole life, whenever I got confused, she'd be there to explain it all to me. One time I remember we were in Rutherford, laying in a supply of tofu. We grew our own fruits and vegetables at Garland, but everything else had to be brought in from outside. And then we stopped at the hardware store to stock up on duct tape, which was about the most useful thing on earth for a farm commune. It repaired roofs, walls, pipes, cars, furniture, and boots. At last quarter of Garland was held together with this stuff. It made an instant cast for a broken finger, and it even pulled splinters out of your skin. Before I was born, when there were lots of young children growing up in the community, all those diapers used to be fastened by squares of duct tape. Oof, that sounds like a really bad diaper. And when we got to the store, there was a group of people blocking the entrance. They were carrying signs and chanting. They seemed to be really angry about something. Rain explained that the employees were on strike, standing up for the fair treatment. She thought it was an excellent idea. She refused to cross the picket line, so we drove 20 miles out of our way to buy our own duct tape. We came back, though, and marched with our strikers for a couple of hours. Rain even let me unscrew the knobs to let the air out of the tires of the boss's car. Rain said that the trip was the purest from our education, learning by doing. I could have used the kind of wisdom now, with so much going on in my life, and so many things I didn't understand. Like bullfighting, I asked Mr. Donnelly about it, but the subject really seemed to bother her. She advised me to ignore it and motioned it again, so I looked it up in the encyclopedia. As I figured out why Miss Donnelly was so upset, bullfighting is a cruel sport where innocent animals are tormented, tortured, killed, and have their ears cut off. I needed Rain more than ever to ask her why school would have anything to do with that. But she was out of the picture. This was a decision I would have to make on my own. Well, this is just a great time. He's basically getting bullied and making fun of it, and the principal doesn't even help him. That's awesome. I feel bad for him. The next time I saw Zach Powers, I put my foot down. I'm not going to ask Mr. Kasagi about bullfighting anymore. I object to it on moral grounds. He said, I respect your honesty, and shook my hand. As he walked away, I noticed his shoulders shaking, overcome with emotion, I guess. I was beginning to see the growing up knowing only one other person had some serious disadvantages. Without Rain as my mentor and guide, I was lost. School made me dizzy. I spent half of my time wandering the halls, asking people for directions to rooms they never heard of. Students were constantly preparing me with questions that I didn't have answers to. And now a girl named Lorelei Lumley was writing me notes about she loved to run her fingers through my hair. Why would anybody want to do that? The closest thing I had to Rain was Hugh Winkleman. Hardly a replacement, but at least he was willing to help. We ate lunch together every day, and I found myself honestly looking forward to a regular meeting where Hugh could explain things for me. It's obvious, he said. She's in love with you. I don't even know who she is. I hadn't learned more than 15 or 20 names at this point. He was disgusted. Typical. I haven't spent my whole life in this dumb town. I've never gotten a girl to give me a second look. And here you have someone named Lorelei throwing herself at you. You can't let that slip through your fingers. Ask her to the Halloween dance. What is the Halloween dance? Only the most important social event of the school year. Not that I've ever been to one, his eyes narrowed. If you're 8th grade president, shouldn't you know about it? I hope not, I said wordily. Hugh looked dubious. Well, you probably shouldn't go by me. I'm not exactly Mr. Popularity around here, but I think the president plans the whole shining refreshments, decorations and music. Something tingled directly beneath my peace sign. I wore it around my neck, and I was developing a sixth sense for trouble that was coming my way. But was good it was advance warning. Advance warning of what? I wasn't going to understand it anyway. Maybe that was a mistake even trying to understand. Garland was so simple, 7 acres of land, containing exactly one house, one barn, a vegetable garden, fruit trees, a pickup truck, and only one other person. Maybe in a place as complex as the C average middle school, it was impossible to analyze a single thing that happened. Like that there were those little white paper balls that I kept brushing out of my hair every night. Was there so much paper in the school that the molecules eventually clustered and fell like precipitation? And how did a pickled brain and all of those other weird objects get into my locker? I thought the whole point of a lock was that no one could open it but me. I sure never put pink goo and a dead bird in there. Rain always recommended meditation for stress and confusion. But if you meditate in front of your locker, someone might steal your sandals while your eyes are closed. I had to go home barefoot on the school bus that afternoon. I know complaining is a negativity trip, but I was hard to stay positive about the floor of the school bus. It's a collecting place for the filthy, smelly, sticky, and often sharp and jagged cast-offs of society run wild. If I'd ever questioned why Rain and her friends gave up on city life in San Francisco and founded Garland back in 1967, 5 minutes on that bus to explain it. The dark unbearably on the human animal was turned loose on the vehicle. It was crowded, noisy, dirty, rowdy, uncomfortable. People fought, shrieked, threw things at one another, and tormented the helpless traveler. It was an insane asylum on wheels. By the time I made it to Donnelly's house, my bruised and bleeding feet were decorated with lollipop sticks, chewing bubble gum, hairs, broken soda can tabs, straws, buttons, and some things that I couldn't even identify. To make matters worse, Sody caught me in the backyard, hosing off my feet on the outdoor tab. "Nice," she muttered. But the thing is, her expression said that she didn't think it was nice at all. Lately, every time I talked to Sophie, she looked like she just ate some turnips that had been harvested a week too late. Her face twisted in an unpleasant contortion that made it hard to see how beautiful she was. But I tried my best because I knew about her disappointment over her father and the driving lessons. I realized my good fortune at being raised by Rain, who never broke a promise and never let me down in any way. The more I thought about it, the more I wanted to do something nice for Sophie, to make her feel better. But how could I ever make that happen? Every time I went near her, she practically bit my head off. Oh jeez, I think I broke something. That's okay. As long as we're still recording, I think we're alright. Okay. Oh, I think I turned off the sound. Or did I? I don't know. Oh, anyways. Chapter 9. Name Sophie Denali. My name is the most generous, caring, good-hearted, or my mother is the most generous, caring, good-hearted, sympathetic person in the world. She even chose a career developed to helping people. She's a saint. I always knew loosely attitude was going to get us into trouble one day. Still, never in my wildest nightmares could I have imagined myself living in a refugee from Bizarro world. The stuff she scraped off of his feet alone would have been enough to get the house commended by the Board of Health. God only knew what was living in his hair and his clothes. I was amazed that he didn't give up and walk away on their own. Mom insisted that he was very clean. I told you about her generous to a fault. He's been wearing the same stuff for the past 3 weeks, I accused. They just look the same because they're all cotton tie-dyes, she explained patiently. He has plenty of clothes. I drove. I'm sorry for the yawning. It's kind of late. It's 2:35 a.m. for me. They just look the same because they're all cotton tie-dyes. She explained patiently. He has plenty of clothes. I drove out to Garland myself to pick up his things. I hope you brought extra shoes too, I put in. Somebody hung a pair of corn husk sandals on the high voltage wires by the commuter line. I wonder who they belong to, I called Brad Pitt. But he's wearing his. Don't be unkind, she told me sharply. The way those kids are teasing Cap is inhumane. Have a little compassion. Have a little compassion. Have a little compassion for me, I said suckily. Josh was just dropping me off while the freakazoid was scrapping a third word country of his feet. You know what he said? Is that your brother, Sophie? What did you tell him? What could I tell him? I said it was a homeless guy. A person can dream. My solemn vow. Should Capricorn Anderson put the very kibosh on my chances with Josh Winstrup? Not even Muller's social workers training could save him. If Josh and I started dating, are you there, God? It's me, Sophie. There'd be no way to keep that space alien off the radar screen. I could have sworn there were 6 of them. Wherever I wanted to be, that's where he was. Squeaking the porch swing, or hogging the kitchen table, eating those organic soy nuts Mom bought for him. He even started watching my favorite show, Trigonometry, and Tears, the high school soap opera. Because he had never seen TV before, he was a total addict who barked out warnings and advice to characters on screen. Will you shut up? I yelled, not for the first time, even though he was embarrassed and still defending himself. Nick doesn't know that Allison has found out he's been seeing Corny on the side. They're actors, it's a story. They can't even hear you. And he understood, sort of, but he didn't stop talking to the TV. It was just too much for him. Just too new for him. How could I ever explain that to Josh? I needed to have worried that the relationship was over before it started. I probably should have told Josh that Cap was my brother, or maybe my husband. It would have saved me the most boring date of my life. To think that I pulled strings to call in favors for him to meet. What a letdown. He talked about video games for 3 hours before telling me he was getting back together with his ex-girlfriend from Indiana. Rock on. So I wasn't in the best moods when Josh took me home after the ordeal. There was only one thing that could have made this night any worse. FaceTime with my favorite, Martin. He was waiting for me on the porch. Hi. Where's my mother? Around the corner at the Peabody's, he told me. Quick, we should have just an add-on. I wasn't weary for what? To pick up a new staples out of your feet? He held up the car keys and jingled them in front of me. Driving lessons. I stared at him. Driving lessons? From a little squirt like you? Then I remember what Mom had told me, that Cap had been arrested and released for driving without a license. At that lawless flower child Camp Dayglow, they probably let you drive when your foot could reach the pedal without breaking the moisture seal on your training pants. I know your other lessons got canceled, he went on. Oh, thanks, Mother. Someday I'll repay you by telling your personal business to every passing hobo. I felt betrayed, fierce, and intrigued. My mother was a total flake. He'd probably get around to giving me a lesson one day, but it would have been pure random chance and if it ever happened. Sorry, I'm back. And he went on, "Oh, thanks, Mother." I felt betrayed, furious, and intrigued. My father was a total flake. He'd probably get around to giving me a lesson one day, but it would be pure random chance when and if it ever happened. And Mom's killer schedule didn't leave a lot of windows of opportunity. I wanted to drive. I needed a teacher, even if it had to be a freakazoid. I did a lot of things I promised myself I'd never do. I got into the car with him. I listened to him and did what he told me to do. That idiotic Zen hippie style of his turned out to be just right for a driving instructor. No matter what mistakes I made, it didn't seem to faze Cap. Not even when I thought someone's driveway was a side street and turned onto it. "Honest mistake," said Cap, but rattled. I stepped on the gas instead of the brake. The Saturn burst forward. Suddenly, a white-painted garage door loomed out of the darkness. Coming up fast, I lost it. I didn't even have the sense to take my foot off the gas. I was in mid-panic when Cap reached over and yanked on the steering wheel. He swung around the tires of the Saturn, cheering soft earth as we plowed into a flower bed. Even though the ride slowed us down long enough for him to reach and shift into park, the car lurched to a halt. "Abnormal breathing," he ordered quietly. "And through the nose, out through the mouth." "But there's no almost," he lectured sternly. "Only happens and didn't happen. This didn't happen. Get us out of here," I whimpered, but my lungs were filled with air. "You'll do that. It's a circular driveway. Just continue around." I was really panicking. Visions of angry homeowner coming at us with his shotgun were whirling around my head. "I can't. It's too narrow. And there's trees on both sides. I'll hit something." At this point, I didn't care if I never drove again. I just wanted to make it home alive in something that still resembled a Saturn. He was endlessly patient. This is a philosophy Rain passed on to me when she taught me how to drive the truck. I very nearly hit him. This is no time for hippy-dippy wisdom. But there was no stopping Cap when the subject was the immortal Rain. She said, "If the front gets through, the rest will drag." I stared at him. That's philosophy? Rain used to drive a taxi in San Francisco before she formed Garland. I let out a nervous giggle and it relaxed me. I put the car back in gear and aimed the hood between the two trees. May Mother never find out that I was piloting her precious Saturn on the instructions from Rain. The face of her is so many of her childhood memories. When we reached out to the road, I was painting with pure relief. The freakazoid made me pull over while we went back and replanted the flowers I'd spun up. I was so grateful I didn't even kill them. Surviving my first brush with disaster must have boosted my confidence, because I was a better driver after that. In short order, I was tooling around the neighborhood with something approaching skill. Pretty soon I even forgot my learner's permit probably wasn't valid. When I was in the car, someone even less qualified behind the wheel than I was. I was so wrapped up in the experience that it took me a few seconds to recognize the female pedestrian we'd just passed. My mother, I rasped. "Oh man, we are so busted." He didn't seem to understand why. Think for once in your life. What does neither of us have? A driver's license, maybe? This was more serious than a few uprooted cherry blossoms. We were going to do something highly illegal. If she catches us, I'll be grounded till I'm 40, and you'll be sleeping in the street. For the first time, he seemed to realize that we weren't playing by the heavy rules. Obviously, Mom hadn't noticed our car, because she wasn't sprinting after us, yelling. Hands trembling, I turned off the block, and we switched drivers. I may have been bugging out, but I have to say Cat was totally cool under pressure. We had to go out of our way to avoid passing Mom again, but he whipped the car around corners, through darkened streets, and up into the driveway. We sprinted into the back door, and we were caught on the couch of the trilogy in tears when she came in. She regarded me suspiciously. What? I immediately grasped the weak spot in our cover. Mom had left the two teenagers at war, only to return home to a peace treaty. So I turned on the cap. I turned the cap and snarled, "Keep your split ends off my side of the couch." That seemed to mollify her. It was exactly the kind of thing I'd say to Cap ever since he arrived at our front house there weeks before. My heart wasn't in it, and my heart wasn't in it that night. And that's it. I'm gonna continue chapter 10 on next time because I am exhausted as crap. Anyways, I apologize for such a long time. I appreciate all of you for sticking and listening to the reading session. If you want me to read any other books, just comment down below what kind of books you want me to read, because I have Harry Potter books. I have a lot of different ones. I have classes over a bunch of other kinds. But like I said, if you want me to do another, or you just want to keep me on these chapters, please comment, subscribe to have more content like this. Leave a like, and I'll see all of you next time when we read. Bye bye.